Good evening. Seated in coach on a commercial flight is not a great place to meet anyone. We'd met just moments before as we stood at the gate at Reagan National, looking up at the list of upgrades with despairing hope. I turned around because I heard two disgruntled individuals late on a Friday afternoon commiserating over the fact that their fate was going to be like mine. We were stuck in the back. When I turned around, saw a gentleman in a gray suit, a green tie, and a Baylor baseball cap. I introduced myself to those two individuals. Said, looks like we share the same fate. And when I introduced myself to Ken Starr, I said, well, Ken, Baylor has quite a bit of my money. My oldest daughter went there. Perhaps, providentially, we were meant to be seated across the aisle from each other late that Friday afternoon. Ken had just returned from a religious freedom conference. If you know Ken, you can imagine that he told me a lot about that conference as we flew back to Fort Worth. Shared with him a little bit about my work, higher education, having done some work in theology and law and some in religious freedom. Well, 4 months later, I was representing Baylor's interest in D.C. Now, represented their interest on a number of educational issues, but mostly religious freedom. Very soon after that meeting on the plane, and starting with Baylor, Ken introduced me, Tom Farr. All of that within about 4 months. And I began collaborating with RFI more than any other organization in D.C. Like many of you here tonight, Ken quickly became my mentor, my colleague, my friend. We walked the halls of Congress together, more than either of us would probably like to say. Had many meetings with members of Congress. I know during those years, I would always often send Ken an email or call and say, Ken, I think you need to come to D.C. We've hit a block. Maybe it was on the Frank Wolf amendments to the Religious Freedom Act. Maybe it was on H.R. 390, the Iraq and Syria Genocide and Relief Accountability Act. And say, Ken, I need you here in D.C. Sure enough, he'd be here. Sometimes Alice was in the background on those calls saying, are you sure you need to make another trip to D.C.? We worked together. We advanced initiatives to support higher education, Baylor students. And we frequently talked about and watched America's favorite pastime, baseball. Remember on one occasion, I was often going to the Nationals games. My family weren't in town. I'd just go over and watch the baseball. But if you went to watch baseball with Ken and Alice, you went to Baltimore. Never quite figured that out, but had to go see the Orioles. It would really be impossible to overstate Ken's impact on the Religious Freedom Institute. He was there at the beginning. He was really the one that brought the oldest Catholic university in America together with the largest Baptist university. I dare say not many individuals could have done that. It'd be hard to overstate his impact on RFI. The same could be said for our National Center for Religious Freedom Education. The center's resources and programs are fundamentally based in the rule of law. We are passionate about education. We are devoted to defending religious freedom. Ken, in his life and work, embodied these fundamental principles of American democracy. To many of you in this room tonight, Ken was also mentor, colleague, and friend. Many of you in different capacities. Please join me this evening as we share a short video tribute to Judge Ken Starr.
Many of us, as we're gathered here today, think of our personal relationship with Ken Starr. I think everybody in the room has known him to some degree or another. And as I said to a friend just last night, I said, anyone who has known Ken during these past 5, 10, 20 years, each year we get to think more and more highly of him. The more you know him, the more highly you think of him.
It was John Locke who gave a bouquet to Baptists for fighting the cause of religious freedom and really freedom of the mind, which is so important in the academic world. It's really freedom of conscience. It is a profound respect for the dignity of each human being.
The freedom of religion, both not simply to believe but to act, is entirely consistent with human flourishing, and the failure to provide a regime of religious liberty results in human impoverishment.
No one is to be above the law, and why is that? Because each person has his or her bedrock freedoms, and those bedrock freedoms must be respected even by governmental authority.
When one turns to the First Amendment, one sees religious liberty lifted up as the first of the first freedoms. What is beautiful about RFRA, the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, is that Congress has spoken with enormous unanimity and supported by President Clinton saying, government, please respect these religious views. No matter how important the public policy is, it's got to be a policy of the very highest order.
The Supreme Court is more frequently than not the friend of religious liberty. I've always been a person of faith, fallen though I am. As James says in chapter 3, we stumble in so many ways. But I've always cared deeply about faith and the ability of all persons to live out their lives consistent with their faith journey.
We have learned to our sorrow of the woe that befalls us as a country when rules are flouted and process is torn asunder. We see what happens when a system of ordered liberty is compromised, and the injury is to the entire body politic.
But these fundamental values and premises are under assault. We need to recapture the goodness of America and articulate it.
When the book is written on the great baby boomer generation, as it passes from this mortal coil perhaps 40 or 50 years from now, that generation's book will be hard-pressed to find a more nobler or more honorable man than Ken Starr.